What's up, everyone? Welcome to Unfazed Facts, the podcast dedicated to all things Gym Leader Challenge and the Pokemon TCG. I'm one of your hosts, Jeff Beisch, and like every episode, we are joined by Joshua Benson, aka Gym Leader Josh. Josh, what's up, my friend?
What is up, guys? It's denim weather. We got that nice denim, and I went to put my backpack on earlier today and made a big old hole in my my elbow there. So that's kind of sad. But other than that, you know what I had to look forward to at the end of the day? Talking about some good old Gym Leader Challenge.
Oh, yes. Love
Yep.
me some GLC. Of course, that's why we do this. But yeah, I'm excited to talk too. And today we get to talk about kind of just some random tournaments, to be honest. Like when we were thinking about this episode, it was just kind of became like a tournament roundup, and you threw out full group games, and LAIC just happened. So we have those results. We've had some really big online webcam tournaments too recently, Josh. It just feels like Gym Leader Challenge has just blown up this month in a way that I did not foresee.
Yeah, we've had a ton of GLC things happening, especially with those Sunday Cardboard Warriors tournaments. They got kind of big real fast, just out of nowhere. So that was exciting. That kind of got me hyped to, talk about some more tournament top stuff along with LAIC, and we'll get to that here in a little bit. But we also have some locals list or submission list that if you won with a recent list at locals, you can kind of submit. We'll talk about that again later, and we can, talk about that list if we choose it. We're not everything's going to make it in there, but yeah, we got a lot of lists to go over today. It's going to be pretty exciting, and let's go ahead and get into it.
Yeah, for sure. We're going to be a little brief just because of the amount of lists that we have to go over. So we're not going to do our normal detailed overview of almost every single Pokemon in these lists. The good news is I think there's some pretty common trends amongst almost every single tournament result. I'm going to be honest, Josh, we're going to be talking about lists that have pretty good special energy in them all night. It feels like a good time to be a deck that relies on special energy.
Oh yeah, special energy decks are really good right now, which makes Enhanced Hammer a really good card.
Yeah, I'm even thinking about Temple of Sinnoh, something like that. Just like at this point, I'm like, what decks do I stop? Wailord, Snorlax, Dragon, and we're going to be talking about these decks as we get into it. Now, we recently had a Switch series at NAIC. For those of you who don't know, it's just basically kind of a big tournament with deck lists that requires, a round and then top cut, kind of situation. And then, of course, the winner gets a Nintendo Switch at the end, hence the name Switch Series. Well, the Latin American International Championships had its own Switch Series. We had 34 players, 6 rounds, and, of course, a top cut at the end. And all of this was brought to us by Brunno Neves. And we got some sweet list to talk about. A lot of them the same. Now, MetaShare here, Josh, not surprised to see Colorless dominating at the top. Fan Rotom from Stellar Crown has just been phenomenal and really pushed that type to some consistency. Dragon being the second most played type is a little surprising, but it is another deck that really relies on double energies. Psychic, Grass, and Water kind of finish out our top most played types. Water, Dark, Fighting, Lightning, kind of all with an 8.8% share. And of course, Fire at the bottom, probably where it belongs. Anything jump out at you here, Josh, from the meta from LAIC?
Well, to those that love Fairy, the first thing that they're going to see is that there is no Fairy. No Fairy or Metal, if I believe. There's no Metal as well. But it's kind of crazy to see Dragon doing so well, even better than Water and Psychic. I mean, Dragon used to be one of the decks that lacked a little bit, and you had to rely on using Dragonaut's Fast Call quite a bit. But now we got some other cards that you're going to see in some of these deck lists that kind of help with a lot of that consistency issue that was being had, or having to wait until that Dragonaut was fully evolved. But Colorless being at the top makes complete sense. Colorless is dominating right now. It's doing so well. But there's always an answer for that, and that is with that low amount of fighting you see down there.
Yeah, I think we just need some more people to play fighting, and then it's just like Colorless is kept in check to a reasonable degree. Obviously, Hitmon Bros has seen a lot of success recently. I would love to see more ancient fighting lists out there too. We'll see if maybe a new card from Surging Sparks pushes it towards the edge, but that's not what we're talking about tonight. We're talking about the top 4. Now, even though Colorless was a large percentage of the overall meta, didn't find its way into the top 4. And this is the top 4 from LAIC. And if you're interested in finding these deck lists a little bit later on, I'll post the link in the description to Brunno Neves' recap, where you can find all the deck lists and kind of some information about these deck lists as he walked around and gathered this up. Brunno Neves is just doing so much for the community. Not only is he a super skilled player, but he's also kind of like the biggest promoter that we have coming out of Brazil. He's kind of like a boxer and a promoter all in one. Like if you're promoting Evander Holyfield, he's both of them. And so it's super awesome to see him doing that and sharing all this information with us.
Yeah, go support Brunno by reading his awesome article on each of the decks, each of the top 8 decks, and getting around and getting that information. That's awesome.
And on top of that, he does have a YouTube channel. I'll link that in the description too. He posts all of his local rounds up there, with commentary in Portuguese. But I do think he maybe can do subtitles in English. I'm not sure if that's a thing, but definitely go check out his channel if you get the chance. He is doing a ton for GLC. You can always follow him on Twitter too. Tons of lists get posted all the time. It's just awesome what Brunno Neves is doing to share with us in the global community what GLC is all about in Brazil. Now, our top 4, our champion was Luan Kinji. We had the runner-up Gustavo Serafim. You have Hugo Palacios and Monaco rounding up to the top 4 there. 3 of these lists are Dragon. The top 3 were Dragon. And then we're going to see Psychic here in the 4th. Let's talk about this championship list real quickly. The most kind of shocking thing that you see when you look at this list is the lack of Dragonite. And that's kind of been a trend recently, Josh. This is pretty standard. You're seeing kind of Haxorus, Garchomp lines. You're seeing Tatsugiri and Dracloak, 2 new consistency pieces, but no Dragonite in this list. Is that just the new norm for Dragon going forward?
It seems like a lot of Dragon lists are, teetering between should I play Dragonite and Tatsugiri, or should I play just Tatsugiri or just Dragonite. I myself love Fast Call on Dragonite, but you can't deny all the success that has been seen so far, and you'll see that Tatsugiri does help out a lot in being able to, bring it down for you to be able to fit in a few more cards. So you can see in this list right here, with the lack there of Dragonite, gives you room for the new Haxorus that came out a couple sets ago that has the Dragon Axe, I believe, for 1 fighting, knocks out a Pokemon with a special energy. It's kind of crazy. That's a Wailord out the wazoo right there. But if your Wailord doesn't have a special energy on there, you can just hit it for 230 and knock it out that way. You have to discard the top 3 cards of your deck as well. But with that room, that taking Dragonite out and using Tatsugiri kind of helps give you a little bit more room to work with a lot of different cards. Like specifically in this one, I see that we have a Rosen's Backup. And Rosen's Backup helps you. It's usually you'll see like a Lusamine probably, but we got this backup here. And with the backup, it allows you to get a tool card, I believe, a special energy, a Pokemon, and a stadium. So Lusamine only lets you get supporters back and stadiums, and most of the time you're going to be just getting back stadiums or just another supporter to use later on. And so Rosen's Backup is kind of gives you more leeway to get more back into the deck if need be, which could be your Tatsugiri, which could be one of your cards, but allows you to also get a tool and a special energy as well. So this deck is pretty special. You'll see it kind of being the rounding out the Dragon decks that we see here in the future.
Yeah, I think so too. Roseanne Backup is a very unique card to see. It's seen a lot of play in Dragon before, like in niche uses and situations. Not being back to hand is a little tough, but obviously Kenji liked it a lot here in their list. I like a lot the fact that we're dropping Fast Call Dragonite. Tatsugiri is real good, and like you're going to be trading KOs, throw a U-turn board on it. You just kind of get bargain bin Fast Call to kind of keep you, consistently playing the game in a different manner, with less deck spaces, and you get to play another stage 2 like Haxorus, which like you said, Wailord Killer, hitting big numbers just feels like it's becoming more and more important each new set printing.
Oh yeah, and talk about the bling too. It has some nice bling to this deck as well.
Oh yeah, you can tell that this man loves dragon. Second place list, also dragon. This dragon list is playing Fast Call Dragonite. You'll notice no Haxorus in this list, but you will notice that it does have Raging Bolt. It's got Koraidon. It's got a little bit of an ancient package. So here we're kind of seeing like the different styles of dragon that can be played, which if you were to tell me this a couple months ago that there were multiple dragon lists that were performing well, or you had multiple options in your dragon lineups, I would not believe you, because at some point we were all thinking about maybe playing Snorlax doll on our list because there wasn't another good basic dragon, and now we're like, which are the good ones that you can play? I mean, we're not even talking about the Drampa that just needs 3 colorless but does more damage if it has 2 types of energy on it. So like, that's not even these lists yet, but it's just so cool and unique to see this list. Josh, do you have any thoughts on Gustavo Serafim's second place list at the LAIC Switch Series?
Well, like you said, we have Raging Bolt and Koraidon in this deck, and that is pretty cool to see. I imagine the Koraidon's in there as like kind of a shred attack for 130, kind of has some synergy with the other Pokemon in the list, like Garchomp and Raging Bolt. But you can also, with the Ancient Dragons, you can also utilize Professor Sala's Vitality a little bit more so than if you were just using a Raging Bolt. So you have a little bit more room to be able to use that Professor's Vitality, as well as getting some draw support as well. That's really good for Dragon, because there's a lot of key pieces that you want in Dragon at the same time. And if you can get that, it really helps, have some of those pop-off turns.
Mm-hmm. Definitely agree with you. Now, obviously, not opting for a lightning energy in this deck, which is a little interesting because, getting an early Raging Bolt is pretty deadly. Koraidon's first attack is actually more useful than people think too. If you can get Koraidon plus Raging Bolt on turn 1, you're doing 60 to the active if you have DDE. And if you got that off Guzman Hala, you might get the Fighting Fury Belt, which is that 70 HP that you hit a lot of basics for. So Koraidon's first attack, I think, is a little slept on. Obviously not ideal in a lot of situations, but it basically does the same thing that Drampa did in the past, because Drampa used to be a pretty big donk machine in its heyday too, even without Gapejaw Bog finding its way onto the battlefield. So we see Koraidon kind of fitting into that same role, at least with the first attack. But you will notice the lack of Drampa, and I really like that in this list because Drampa is like its own package, right? You have to run Drampa, you have to run the Gapejaw Ball. It's pretty good early. You got to make sure you can find that rainbow energy. Sometimes it takes 2 attachments just to even get that Drampa online. So it's neat to see that it's not included here because I'm not the biggest fan of that Drampa, to be honest.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of this list, to be honest.
Gustavo, good job. Now, third played list is Dragon. Hey, this is very similar to the first list that we saw. I think almost identical. Haxorus, Garchomp, no Fast Call Dragonite, and of course you got those pieces there to help you out. Just feels like Dragon's in a good place. It feels like double energies are in a good place, Josh, and it just feels like Dragon getting these new pieces has really skyrocketed. I think I put it in like B tier a while ago. I'm reconsidering where Dragon's at after seeing all the different lists do well with it. Josh, what are you thinking about Dragon these days after seeing first, second, third place at LAIC and some of the other results around the world?
Now, not to downplay the LAIC, it was a smaller tournament, but Dragon is definitely getting up there, and I think that this proves that it's definitely high B to low A tier at this point with all the different variations, because with all the other types, a lot of the time you can kind of tell pretty quick, hey, this is going to be this style of deck. But with Dragon, it's so subtle. You have a lot of the same package, but then you don't know what's going to pop up. Is it going to be an Haxorus? Is it going to be a Drampa? Is it going to be a Raging Bolt? Is it going to be a Koraidon? So you have all these different things, especially that Professors of Vitality deck. You can just get you could expect them not to have the energy, and then they have the energy because they got the Sala's Vitality, being able to get it out there. So Dragon has a lot going for it right now, and definitely high B, low A tier at the moment.
Yeah, it's worth noting too. We haven't talked a lot about Crispin, but Dragon is like the most natural home for Crispin. And when you think about Crispin, Guzmahala, you think about Colress's Tenacity, you've got all these ways to power up your attackers Plus, you're playing Raihan. So just like, out of nowhere, attackers are, existing on the battlefield, taking KOs here and there. And we haven't even talked. Kirim is in none of these lists, which is a little interesting. When you think about Dragon Tune, you talked about the different mons that you're going to see presented onto the battlefield. Kirim is one that you have to have in the back of your head because, if you play your own Culver's card, are they going to plop down a Kirim and then for 1 energy do 330 damage, spread amongst 3 of your Pokemon by 110? Which happened at my locals 2 days ago. Someone had no idea what Kirim was, played a Culver's Tenacity just to get an Artisan, and then got smacked on turn 2 by a Kirim, and I was like, no! So,
Golly.
yeah. So just so much to think about when it comes to Dragon now.
Yeah, and you can see Drekloak has made its way into each of these decks as well. I know there's been some talk of it being a little less helpful, but as you can see in these 3 specific decks that it is pretty helpful on, looks like, at least seems, with that consistency being able to draw.
Yeah, right. It's just card filtering, adding a card to your hand, putting a card on bottom. It's just such an, I think, maybe underutilized ability in a lot of different decks, right? Like Pidgeotto exists in colorless, but we don't see Pidgeotto used too often. It's mostly in the control variants. But even then, it's like, maybe should we be playing Pidgeotto? Because this Drekloak has been very, very good. And if we ever get a single prize Dragapult that's a dragon printing, oh man, talk about roll compression. That would be busted. So again, if we get a Dragapult, things are going to be looking really, really good for Dragon going forward.
Oh, that'd be nuts, actually.
And it's it's even more hilarious as we look at all the success that Dragon had at the LAIC, that the Dragon set, the special Dragon set, had like absolutely no good cards for Dragon in it.
Don't even remind me. Do not even remind me.
It didn't need them. It's so good without it.
I was so hyped, and I got so disheartened. I was like, wow, okay.
One day we'll get a good Dragon set. All right, 4th place list, I think, is a type that a lot of us thought was going to be just like top tier going forward. We didn't think the Marshadow ban would affect it. Well, we see Monaco here with a 4th place listing, and so maybe has not fallen off as much as I'm leading on to it, but it just feels like Psychic hasn't been where we had hoped it'd been. But this is a pretty cool list. This is kind of a standard traditional Psychic list. You got Gallade, you got Tinkaton, you got some of the special energies there because you're playing Necrozma. You've got new Mysterious Tail Mew. I say new, but people are incorporating it into list because Marshadow is gone. So having another consistency piece has been more important going forward. And this is just good old Psychic beatdown. What I really like about this list a lot is that it's got Malamar over Xatu. That doesn't tend to synergize really well with the special energies that you have in a list like this. And then besides that, you've just got Gallade to help you grab some of these great supporters up here at the top. Culver's Tenacity, Cynthia and Caitlin. You got Guzma and Boss's Order for those switch outs. I mean, this deck just feels really strong. It feels like a pile of good cards, and that's what Psychic has. Josh, is that where Psychic is in your brain? Just a pile of good cards?
Psychic is always going to be a pile of good cards. Psychic will always have incredible cards, but it's so funny that we say Psychic has all the good cards, but now it's not at the top of the mountain at the moment. So it's kind of trying to get back on its feet again. We see that we have this Blacephalon here, which is an interesting play. You don't see a whole lot of Blacephalon in the Tinka laid deck as of late, but Blacephalon is always a good call for just like a little spice whenever your opponent's taking 3 prizes. I believe it's 3 prizes.
Mm-hmm.
You get to spread 13 damage counters everywhere, which is very awesome. And then you also have Recycle Energy. Recycle Energy is one of my favorite special energies. You can just kind of get knocked out, and then it goes back to your hand. That way you're always guaranteed an energy at the end of your turn. And then with the Cleffa, you have a nice free pivot and early draw. I always like seeing Cleffa. I thought we might have saw the new Smoochum, I believe. I think it was legal for this, wasn't it?
I think so. We saw Raging Bolt, right? And Raging Bolt and Smoochum are in the same set, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah. I think so.
Maybe one Surging Sparks.
But yeah, Smoochum, Smoochum was one of the new good cards that come out of Surging Sparks as well. So I thought we'd see that, but we did not. But that's all right. But yeah, this is a good, well-rounded Psychic list, and I love that Tinkaton. Tinkaton is in it.
Yeah.
I'm always gonna love a Tinkaton deck.
Yeah, and we haven't even talked about Mimikyu. I think Copycat is such an important attack right now in the moment, especially if you're running a whole bunch of special energies. It gets you that Wailord. It's going to come back and it's going to hit a lot of the dragons because dragons usually top out about 160 HP and they do about 160 damage. So Mimikyu into dragon, Mimikyu into water, all pretty good things. Now, Hydro Pump Water, Mimikyu is so bad, but it's really good into some of the other matchups that are coming up here. But, good job by Monaco here with his 4th place Psychic list, Psychic Tinkaton. Still really powerful, really strong. Again,
Yeah.
the trend, right? Like Tinkaton and Necrozma here both have special energy synergies. All the special energies that we saw on the Dragon list just feels like Enhanced Hammer needs to be on everyone's mind right now. Right, Josh?
Oh yeah, Enhanced Hammer, especially as just like a one-off tech card for any of your local events or at even big events now with all the rampant special energy reliant decks. Enhanced Hammer is going to be a great tech card to take into your tournament.
Yeah, for sure. I'm trying to put it in every one of my lists. I think it used to be like the 64th or 65th card in a lot of lists, and now I'm like, I think we're moving you up quite a bit. I'm trying to make kind of important cuts to fit that card into a lot of my different decks.
Moving up.
Yeah, let's keep talking about some other things. So LAIC, great thing, 34 players, but every week there are some pretty big tournaments at one of everyone's favorite places. And the birthplace of Gym Winner Challenge, of course, is Full Grip Games. So Mahone did a really great job. Tricky Jim, Andrew Mahone, and Natalie that are in the Tricky Jim Discord do a great job of sharing deck lists with us and have done that in the past. But it feels like recently Ben Morse has taken the reins and he's been kind of sharing out with everyone the different list. He's been making great YouTube comment of kind of the final matches or some of the more interesting matches from the day and does commentary over it. And it's just super great to see kind of again, the birthplace of GLC, what's going on there. And so, Josh, talk us about kind of what Ben Morse has going on for all of us to look at.
So Ben Morse has his website, morsemakes.com, and if you go to it, it'll send you to a page where you can click on it and go straight to GLC stats. You can also go straight to his Etsy store because he does sell playmats. I'm pretty sure Jeff has one of his playmats currently, the water one. And then just some other different things, but we are going to talk about the GLC stats. And if you can see right here, we have all sorts of extremely detailed stats of Full Grip Games for the 2024 and 2025 season. So this is just the current amount of badges that we have right here. And if you look to the side, you'll have your different things and it shows you his YouTube channel, and go ahead and subscribe to that if you haven't already. But on the next slide, we're going to ahead and go to the next slide. We can see that he shows you each week the winner of the GLC tournament for that week. And I mean, this goes all the way to, I think, week 17 or week 18. But from there, you can just click on the badge and it'll take you straight to the list. It also gives you the player and the person who owns the list as well. But if you click on that badge, it'll take you straight to the cardboardwarriors.com to where you're able to look at lists. It'll give you the full list. You can copy it, net deck it, give credit where credit's due. And anyways, yeah, I love this site. I think it's awesome. I asked Ben if we could use this, and he said, yeah, go ahead. So, yeah, we got this awesome list. And with that being said, we're going to go into one of the most recent, I don't think it was this last Thursday, but it was the Thursday beforehand. We have Craig Davenport on the 14th winning with his version of the Psychic spread with a little bit of spice with Mewtwo. Jeff, you want to talk about any of this?
Oh yeah, this is one of my babies. I've been trying to kind of think about what this list might look like myself, and so it's really cool to see Craig, get a result early with this list. And you'll see he's playing Sinister Hand Dusknoir, which is one of my favorite Pokemon. in Gym Leader Challenge that lets you kind of manipulate damage counters as you see fit. And he's incorporating that with some new spread mons that were just recently released. You've got Uxie and you've got the new Kofragigas, both from Surging Sparks. So Kofragigas is 1 energy. It does 6 damage counters to everything that has an ability. And then you've got Uxie that just for 1 energy puts 2 damage counters everywhere, which is pretty cool because we haven't quite had that effect on a basic. It used to be kind of conditional, like the Azelf that does it needed damage counters to already be placed on something, while Uxie is just non-conditional 2 damage everywhere. So we see Uxie kind of as the primary spreader. You see Kofragigas as kind of like, the next follow-up beyond that. And then you just see some other good ways to kind of put damage counters. Giratina just being kind of a good attacker plus having a decent ability with Distortion Door is great. Mewtwo as a way to just come back if you're 90 and 90 is its damage output if your opponent has 3 or fewer prizes. And then Monkey Dory is showing its head. Monkey Dory is really sweet. If you damage your own Pokemon with abilities, because Kofragigas does hit every Pokemon with ability, you can kind of fling them at your opponent with Monkey Dory, which is why you'll see the Dark Energy down there in the Energy Suite. And I think that Crispin, yep, there it is, Crispin is being played in this list too. So just a really cool idea. And because you have access to the Sinister Hand Dusknoir, you're going to see Devolution TM, which is a card I'm really down on in a lot of spread decks. I know it fixes some matchups, but it's really good with Dusknoir because you can be really meticulous about how you place damage counters. So you can tell that Craig's put a ton of work, a ton of love into this deck. Really impressed with it. I'm looking forward to kind of sleeving up my own version soon, but I'm going to be taking a lot of inspiration from Craig here.
Oh yeah, I wish I would have thought of this deck. This deck, the more I look at it, looks really awesome. I love the Monkey Dory include, just being able to just throw some of that damage that you put on yourself back out. And like I had some points I was going to make, just same thing on the Kofragigas and the Uxie. Awesome to see those, as Uxie just kind of just spreading those early, and then Kofragigas kind of coming in and just cleaning up, sweeping up some of the trash that's left over. But we also have that Mewtwo with the Wall Breaker. If you need to get that heavy damage out, you have the option of Mewtwo. While you're spreading all that damage, you can just kind of be building up that Mewtwo on the bench if need be, because Uxie and Kofragigas only take 1 energy. So it's going to give you some time to kind of build up that Mewtwo as well. And then you got your Buddy Cage Gallade that's going to always be just an auto include in all of your Psychic decks. But I'm excited to see this deck. I'm glad to see it do so well. And yeah, I love this deck a lot, actually.
Yeah, and diving a little bit deeper into it, we talked about earlier about always having a game plan for Wailord. I know Wailord is pretty prevalent in where I play, but I'm not so sure if it is where Craig plays, because you don't see the Mimikyu here, but there's also only 2 special energy. So, if I was going to go to my locals and play this list, I'm definitely probably switching Mewtwo for something like that Mimikyu. But obviously, your way to deal with a Wailord in this situation is put damage counters on it, which aren't reduced by Wailord's ability, and then hope that you get to that 120 mark, and then you're able to use Devo to go ahead and just get rid of the Wailmer, which is pretty nice. So that's something to think about, too, with Craig's list. Again, I love it. Love everything about it. So excited to play it. Z-Man is popping up in our Twitch chat, too, mentioning Horn. We should probably mention Echoing Horn, which plops a basic from the discard pile back onto the bench. Just a really cool, nifty card. If you're a Lost Zone Psychic player, that card sees a lot of play. So it's interesting to see it here as well.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of Horn because you could theoretically put a 60 HP Mon that has an ability and just KO that with Kofragigas as well, which is kind of fun.
Yeah. Or just, Giratina put damage counters on it. Monkey Dory put damage counters on it. Dusknoir move damage counters on it, just to try to get something out of your prizes.
Yeah.
There's so many cool things that you can do with Dusknoir. I know people have been down on Dusknoir in the past, but it does let you get to do some really cool things. And if you're a fan of game actions, if you're a fan of spread decks, if you're a fan of manipulating what your opponents, if you're a fan of math, because Dusknoir decks take a lot of math, play this deck. It's really cool. So shout out to Craig here. And of course, another interesting deck here is the week previous to that is by Alex Carpenter, who's Plopel. And Plopel won the first season of Gym Leader Challenge at Full Grit Game, where they were doing kind of the badge board, which is a system that a lot of different locals have adopted. So there's a lot of cred behind what Plopel, who I know him because I talk to him mostly through the Discord, but what Alex Carpenter is doing. This list is super sweet. We're seeing another dragon list here, Josh, and it is awesome by all means. Not playing Dragonite, not even playing the Haxorus, but we do see all the basics. You got Raging Bolt, Regidrago, Drujagun, you got Drampa, and then of course you got Garchomp, which is just kind of your main way to deal with big, beefy mons. Again, we talk about Wailord so often, it feels like, just because it's always on my brain. But this deck's way to deal with Wailord, throw a cape on Garchomp, Sonic Slip, and hit it twice. That's how you have to do it with this deck, but it's effective. So this deck is really cool, again, taking advantage of things like Crispin to power things up, and a really cool card that I think is really important in a lot of decks going forward that I think people maybe slept on a bit is Kofu. Kofu is put 2 cards on the bottom of your deck and draw forward 4. Really important for decks that are looking for combo pieces, and I think that this deck, it fits that, especially when you're trying to store things like, some special energies that you're not playing immediately, or if you have like, some other pieces that you want to just save for later, just pop them on the bottom of your deck and then draw forward 4 instead of the shuffle draw, where you're maybe losing some of those key pieces that you might need to pull off a comeback that turn. So I love this from Alex Carpenter. It's kind of Drago boxy to a degree. Lee Hoffman is known for kind of making this 5 Pokemon Drago box, which is like a Pokestop list at first, and it's kind of evolved. It's kind of in that same vein, and I really like it, Josh. What are your thoughts on it?
Oh yeah, I love the fact that he's just playing that Raging Bolt right there. It's looking real nice. But you touched on my biggest thing is that Kofu. I know that you're a big fan of Kofu, and the more you talk about it, the more hyped I get on Kofu. I had to go to the PKMN cards again just to look at it, and I was like, you know what? That might actually be really, really good.
Oh, yes. It's 2 on the bottom, draw 4. So it's get rid of 3 cards because you are putting Kofu in the discard. So you're only net drawing 4. But, Gym Leader Challenge is such a game of resource and management, right? Getting to put a dead card like Rescue Stretcher when you don't need it, but a card that you're going to want later on the bottom of your deck is sometimes just so much better than like, professors researching and looking at a fresh 7, right? Like I've been cutting professors research from a lot of my decks here, and it looks like Plopel maybe agrees with me to a certain degree because there's no professors research in this dragon list either. So it just feels like Kofu is one of those cards for people that really appreciate resource management, which I know, I don't know if I'm in the minority, but I know I'm very conservative when it comes to my deck list. I'm not with my plays because you guys have seen me throw with crazy wild plays. But when it comes to deck building, I'm pretty conservative. And so Kofu is a card that I think a lot of players that love the game of resource management will enjoy playing.
Yeah, I've been cutting professor's research for a while because most of the time whenever I do research, I got to get rid of a lot of cards that I want. So, and you heard it here first. I think Kofu would really go well in grass spread because there's a lot of pieces in grass that you want to keep.
I'd agree with that too, because you also have Beautifly. So like the netting just 1 card off of Kofu is not that big of a deal, right? Because then you can just draw up with Beautifly too as well in those lists. So I think Kofu will see more play. I'm hoping that as it sees more results, it will, people will start to kind of look at it and be like, what decks do it fit in? I know that Dark is a deck that people have been looking at it. Lightning is another deck. Just because sometimes you got to sprint away some cards. Well, if you Kofu first, you can maybe save some of those cards you were thinking about sprinting away for later on. Cards that are pretty important, like Counter Energy, or if you're playing Counter Gain, which are really good cards for some comeback potential. And now we see it in Dragon. At Fighting, Hitmonbros is starting to play Kofu. So again, Kofu, not a card to be slept on. It's a powerful effect. Managing your resources is really important in the singles and format. That's all I'm going to say.
100%.
Well, all right. We talked about these Sunday tournaments, and man, so I started running them. There used to be a couple Sunday tournaments in the past, Josh, and so I noticed that there was a void. I stepped in. I said, I'm going to run them, and I was thinking I was just going to be clicking a button for like 6 people.
Yeah.
And then the first tournament rolled around. You and I talked to you about casting it. So we're sitting here like, yeah, let's cast it. Thinking that like all I had to do was just like a couple of like, and then like it'd be fine because it'd just be a couple of veterans that have been used to webcam tournaments. But no, our the first Sunday tournament was 18 players, a lot of them new players. And, here we are just like kind of looking at some really sweet lists. You and I are casting while I'm trying to run this tournament. I'm getting judge calls, and it was just a
Yeah,
kind of
yeah.
unique experience. It's something that I did not expect to happen. And so it's given us some really cool and interesting results, because this was the first week that Surging Sparks was legal. So we get to look at some Surging Sparks cards. Now, top 4 from this event, Eric Campos showing us Dragon again, Dragon, and just
Yeah.
special energies is kind of the theme of tonight. Then we got Brunno Neves, who we talked about too, sharing all the information from LAIC, showing us his skills apply it, going 3-1 with Psychic. And then we got Kyle C. He's got GG in front of his names, and those are all people from Good Games, which I do believe is in Chicago. If I'm wrong, someone corrects me in the comment section on YouTube. But yeah, Good Games. A lot of people came out from the Good Games store to kind of test themselves, and Kyle C did really great work with a pretty sweet fire list that I can't wait to talk about. And then Eric Peterford here popping up in 4th place, going 3-1 with Darkness, which is a type that we haven't seen a lot from recently. Anything pop out at you from these top 4 results?
I'm just happy to see that it's like every deck type is different. We got Dragon, Psychic, Fire, and Darkness, and none of those are, at the top of their game right now. So, well, I say none of those. Dragon right now is on top of its game. Dragon's been seeing a lot of success, so it's no surprise to see that. But a surprise would be that there is no colorless here in the top 4. There were colorless in the tournament, but just not in this top 4.
Yeah, no colorless in this top 4. So I'm interested to see kind of why that is as we step into some of these deck lists. But let's get into it. So Eric Campos was our champion. This is just Plopel's list, the one that we just talked about a second ago. Eric Campos said that he was just using a list that he found, and why mess with a list that's done really well? Well, he didn't, and he won with it. Went 4-0. Got a chance to watch a couple of different game. I think we had him on stream like unintentionally maybe 2 or 3 times throughout the night. We definitely had him maybe the first or second round, and then we saw him in the finals round, which the finals round was really sweet, back and forth with who we'll talk about next, Brunno Neves. But anything you want to add about this list before we get on to the second place list?
No, good job piloting a list. Good job on piloting it. It's a really looks like a really fun list to pilot.
Yep, like it a lot. Now, our runner-up, Brunno Neves here, was trying out the Togekiss. So a lot of love to Brunno Neves for trying out this new Togekiss. And for those of you who don't know, Togekiss is basically just a bench sitter that if you take a KO on your opponent's active, you can flip a coin to take an extra prize. Now, as we watched Brunno in the last round, it was like so awesome to see him like set it up and put himself in a position to where he was going to kind of claw his way back after Eric Campos had some early aggression and was kind of in the lead. So there was a point when I think Brunno was at 4 prizes, and in a single turn, he could have taken 4 prizes if he had gotten a Togekiss flip on heads. He got 3 tails in a row. 3 tails in a row. It was bonkers. It was the most unfortunate thing I think I've ever seen. But
it was absolutely disgusting to see.
It like hurt because we were sitting there because we were commenting this game, and we were just like, oh yeah, in this single turn he could take anywhere between 2 to 4 prizes, and he just takes the bare minimum, missing out with Togekiss. And then the next turn it was just like, if one of those had flipped heads, he could have been in a position to maybe win the game, but he's just not at all. 33% chance was just out the window. But the list performed really well, besides a couple coin flips. Monkey Dory, when we saw it, did some work in those matchups. The acceleration that having Xatu and Malamar both can do. I don't think we get to see Togekiss as an attacker in those lists, but again, it was just still really cool to see this Togekiss get some love. I think Brunno called it mid afterwards, and I think he clipped the times that he flipped 3 tails too. So I'm not sure if we're going to see Brunno playing Togekiss in the future.
Yeah, he said Togekiss is mid. Hey, but I'm still going to play with Togekiss. I still believe in it. But it's not just seeing your basic, special energy list with Necrozma and being able to either, choose whether you're going to use Giratina as an attacker and Necrozma as an attacker with your acceleration from your Malamar or your Natu with that draw power as well, or your Zatu. But also, um, Togekiss does have the ability to possibly attack if need be, because you can just over time, put an energy on there every now and then if you have the means to do it, because it does hit a good number of 140, which is going to be a lot of your new out of range Pokemon that your opponent may have, such as Kyogre. Kyogre is 140, and I know I can't think of the top of my head, but 140 is like one of them awkward numbers right now to hit. So I think you can also utilize that as you go on. But yeah, I like this Psychic list. I'm super excited to see him use the new Togekiss, and I just don't give up, Bruno. Don't give up. I want to see it succeed.
Gotta believe in the Togekiss. But yeah, this list was sweet, and I'm planning on trying it out too. And you mentioned Togekiss. It's 3 colorless energy for its attack too. So just 1 attachment from Malamar, 1 attachment from Zatu, and then Dimension Valiant play. It's set up in 1 turn as a 140 attacker, and Monkey Dory can kind of be like your pseudo muscle band, right? You can move some of those damage counters onto the active. So if you think of it that way, this Togekiss has the potential to hit 170 in a turn potentially, and that number is really nice when there's a lot of 162 stage 2s running around. So again, a lot of cool things that this Psychic list can do, and just Psychic can do in general. Again, shout out to Brunno again for all his help with collecting data on LAIC, and of course this list. Check out his YouTube channel. Check out his Twitter and his Instagram, all those things. I'll try to plug them down below in the information section for you all, so you can check out all the great things that he's doing to help grow Gym Leader Challenge, not only through his hype up of all the things they're doing in Brazil, but also these cool and innovative lists that he's creating. Now, third place list comes to us again from that Good Games group down in Chicago. I say down, but I think it's up for both of us here. But Kyle here. It was playing the new Skeledirge. And so that Skeledirge is really interesting. I think on our set review, we kind of both talked about it, and we we're like, it just feels like worse Snorlax. It's a stage 2 with the same thing. And then its attack was maybe like not the best, but we see Kyle using it to great effect. And that's not the only card here that he's playing that's new. We've also got Gouging Fire in there as well. He's got the Armarouge Camerupt kind of like package. Camerupt needs a fighting energy. Armarouge can move fire energy around, and then you've got the Infernape that can put a fire and a fighting energy from your hand onto your Pokemon. So some really kind of neat energy acceleration coming from this deck. It's just really unique, if I'm going to be honest with you. It's kind of cards that we all kind of looked at and maybe evaluated as not being quite good enough for Gym Leader Challenge. And Kyle said, I'm going to put them all on a list and I'm going to do well with them. And that's what he did, Josh.
Yeah. I'm a big fan of this fire list. There's some things that, my play style is a little bit different, so I would do differently, but Kyle's definitely seen some success with this specific one. Loving to see the new Scaly Dirge, and it's awesome 60 plus 20 for, all the Pokemon that are out on the bench, both yours and your opponent. So you can actually hit some big numbers with that specific attack, especially a lot of those heavy hitting decks that your opponents may be playing are going to be greedy for the bench as well. So you can use Skelly Dirge to, use that as one of your ways to get through those big mons. And then with the new Gouging Fire, you have that 100 plus 70 if your opponent has 4 or fewer prizes. We didn't see it do a whole lot, but I still believe that Gouging Fire is one of the cards that Fire needed to, keep itself going. But what we didn't think was that Armarouge is going to be this specific Armarouge is going to be so helpful in getting everything set up. It was actually really helpful. It kind of synergizes with Magma Basin, being able to Magma Basin straight to the Armarouge, and then kind of use that Armarouge to move that energy to the active. But then you just see your standard, smooth over with Macargo, your fire starter. I think that's fire starter with what's it called?
Volcanion.
Volcanion, yes. But yeah, I love seeing Fire getting some success, and you might see Kyle again in the next week.
Oh yeah,
with
yeah.
this.
Kyle seems to be a fire player, trying to prove to all of us out there that fire is good. Now, I think the real cool tech piece, and Spencer was trying to get me to play this the other day, is this camera tier that does 120 plus an additional 120 if you discard a fighting energy from it. And so, this camera is your Wailord killer, right? We talked about Wailord. It's just so important in the format right now. You kind of need a way to deal with big damage just because, so many heal cards exist in these day and age. So again, having a way to one-shot a Wailord just seems of the utmost important, at least if that's something that you see a lot from your locals. So this camera up tier being an option is just super great. I might start playing it because I got paired up against 3 Waterlist 2 days ago at my locals while I was trying to get my fire badge, and the Wailord deck was the one that I could not beat. So there was that. So I'm thinking about this camera up real hard right now.
Oh yeah, definitely be helpful for that.
Yeah. All right, here is our 4th place look. A little bit of darkness coming to us from Eric Peterford, and this is not an interesting list because it does have a lot of like what you've seen from Dark before, right? Dark hasn't really gotten a lot of new cards, but this list is kind of unique because it's got some kind of unique pairings that you haven't seen before. Obviously, Guzzlord is where you start with all of these lists, and then from there, you're looking for just kind of cheap, efficient attackers to pair around it, whether that's Hoopa or Spiritomb or Galarian Wheezing even. But then you've also got Morpeko here, which is a card that you don't normally see in a lot of Dark lists. I know some people are particular to it. Some people like the Eviltal, and then some people go with Donk Meowth, who has the game or the attack Spoil the Fun, which is just such an aptly named card. But this Morpeko is really sweet. If it has, I think if it has a Dark Energy attached, it has free retreat, or it might be if it has no energy attached. Is it Dark Energy?
Yes.
Okay. It has no retreat. And then it also does 70 and then shoots the energy back to one of your bench Pokemon. So if you're looking to charge up your Guzzlord while staying aggressive, the Morpeko is kind of unique and good at that. Besides that, you're seeing the hustle belt technology that some of these lists run, whether it synergizes well with Spiritomb or it might actually work pretty well with Morpeko if you have Frozen City in play here, which does 2 damage counters whenever you attach an energy to one of your Pokemon from hand. Hustle Belt just being one of those big damage mods, which is a little conditional, but Dark really gets away with it with the help of Spiritomb here. So a really cool list. I love to see it, and Eric Peterford is just a really good and skilled pilot. So love this list. Josh, your thoughts?
Let me correct myself. It's no energy on there, and it has free retreat. So you were correct.
Okay.
I just want to say that out loud. But yeah, this is one of your nice standard Dark lists. Guzzlord always coming in hot. You see a Dark Energy, just expect a Guzzlord to be able to, barrel through. And with that new Turbo Energize that came out, all those months ago, you're going to be able to see that Guzzlord get going a lot quicker, especially with Janine's secret technique as well. So you have all this different ways to get the energy out very quickly for Guzzlord. So yeah, this Dark list, I can see why it got 4th place.
Yeah, a really cool card, too, that I have to mention is Giovanni's Scheme. I know that we've talked about Professor Kukui before, just because it's always in Jeffrey's list as one of those cards that's plus 20 damage, plus draw a couple cards. Well, Giovanni's Scheme is either Muscle Belt or Muscle Band on supporter, or it's draw up to 5. So it's kind of a unique card that you don't see too often, but obviously in a deck that's trying to do early damage to potentially donk out an opponent or get rid of a important basic, Giovanni's Scheme seems pretty good here. So kudos to Eric Peterford for that. So again, a great top 4. I love the diversity that we got, Josh. I know you brought that up a little while ago. It's just great to see all that Gym Leader has to offer. It's not just 1 or 2 types. It's not just Wailord, even though I keep bringing it up. It's all these unique decks, and each of these pilots has kind of brought forth their own personality and their play style and has kind of shown us what they can do in a pretty big-sized weekly tournament with no prizing. 18 people, pretty good one.
Yeah, I'm excited to see what the continuance of this will, allow us to see with all the new different, all the different decks that we're going to be able to see.
Well, that brings us up to the following Sunday. Again, we've run 2 so far, and there will be a 3rd one. So if you're interested in playing in a Sunday night tournament, which seems to be one of the better nights for people that are, especially like me, that are maybe a little bit busy and need, if you spend all day dadding and then you're done and you're ready to do some GLC at night, this is the tournament for you. So 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, you can find these tournaments. And here's our second one. 19 players. We actually got more players the second week. Didn't scare anyone off with maybe some of my poor decisions running the tournament. We got more people. And we see, again, another pretty unique top four. Colorless finds its way back to the top like we know it can do. You got Fire Kyle coming back with a similar list, if not the same list, here in second place, again from Good Games. You got Andre Costella that had a nail biter. He and our first place, Shivan Barjwaj, which I'm going to apologize if I mispronounce your name there. Both of them played a very fun game in the finals. And then, of course, another Good Games player. We got Nicholas Lindenbroker down here at the bottom with Dragon. So Colorless, Fire, Water, Dragon. Just so good to see it.
Yeah, we got one more player. We see a pattern. Hopefully we have 20 in the next one. We got Kyle C going up on the leaderboard from third to second. So he's climbing up slowly but surely. Hopefully this next Sunday he gets that first place win with Fire, which would be really cool to see actually. But then again, you see the lack thereof earlier in the 18 player one without Colorless and Water. We got Colorless and Water back. And yeah, I'm excited to get into these lists.
Yeah. So, first place list, Shivan Barjwaj. Again, if I'm mispronouncing your name, I apologize. I appreciate you. And I saw your finals game. It was really sweet. Fan Run again, just popping up, just being all that Colorless needs it to be. On top of that, this is kind of a lazy code list. You've got slacking, but you don't have the code. You actually got Archeops in this list. So this is a really unique Primal Turbo list. Archeops lets you grab any 2 special energies from your deck and attach them to one of your Pokemon, which can be really great when you're trying to kind of set up multiple attackers. You can go here one turn, here the other turn, if some of yours are able to survive. You see some other kind of unique plays. Having the Bunnelby in this list as a pretty good starter with TM Evolution is pretty sweet. It can get you that Archeops in one turn if you're able to find it plus the fossil, which is a lot to do, but definitely manageable. And then you see kind of a cool Tauros. I think we talked about this when we talked about the last Fall Brawl recap. This is Donk Tauros, which is a really cool card as well. Again, it just does 80 for 20, and then it's got another attack that can be reasonable if it's got damage counters on it as well. Nothing really out of the norm for a colorless list, if I'm going to be, quite honest for you. It is playing a couple more outs to the fossil. You're going to see like X Transceiver, Order Pad, Fossil Excavation Mat, just because Archeops is such an important part of this list. And I'm going to be honest, I thought Archeops was dead after the lab ban, but here we see it alive and well, 4-0ing a tournament. Josh, what are you thinking?
Yeah, and what you touched on the excavation map and the X transceiver and your different ways to hopefully guarantee yourself to be able to get that plume fossil out as quickly as possible, as well as the unidentified fossil. You got all those things to kind of help you get going pretty quick, and that's extremely helpful. And then, yeah, just just kind of like instead of a crazy code list, which I think I prefer because I like that play style of being able to just rain dance everything onto the board. You do have the ability to just, get it out of your deck and be able to put it straight onto a Pokemon immediately without having to search for it. But also another thing that I'm a fan of that I've been seeing more of is Peony. And Colorless is one of those decks that can really abuse Peony because it has Bibarel in there, it has Squova in there, and you just have all these different ways to be able to just kind of dig through your deck. Peony is just one of those cards that can really be helpful in seeing some use with that.
Yeah, big fan of Peony, especially in these draw up to decks. Water is another deck that I really like Peony in just because you have access to Octillery, able to discard some cards that might be dead after you've set up a bit. And you have the same thing here. You can basically, Peony, discard your hand, make 2 playables. Then if you got Bibarel in play, you're seeing 2 cards that you definitely have hand picked for that turn. plus 5 new cards. So you've seen 7 really good cards in that turn, and that's just something that can happen. Now, Peony is kind of a bum card if you aren't quite set up and you're struggling, but it could also just be, a pretty useful anytime teammates if you think about it. So I really like Peony a lot too, and you touch on it there. Might be tough at times in the colorless list if you have special energies in hand. Fortunately,
Yes.
Nest Stash from Squovit can help you out a bit. Store those cards on the bottom. If you happen to top deck your Peony, you're just like, that's free. 2 free. So
That
there's
is so free.
But yeah, shout out to Shivan Barjwaz again. Watched his final match. Man, this deck ran so smoothly in that finals match. Like any time that Andre Castella, which is the third place list that we'll see them, both of them were 3-0 going into kind of like the finals 3-0 match. Even though Andre didn't finish second, he had the chance for potentially finishing 4-0 in the first. So watching that match, any time that Castella, who's a great player, phenomenal player, was, putting himself in positions to kind of pull ahead, this colorless deck just had the answer. And it just felt, I don't want to say hopeless for Castella, but even with all the amazing things that he was trying to do, like there was an amazing, like throw a luxurious cape on a wishy-washy to stall and then shuffle it back into your deck on a tails flip, like to just buy himself a couple turns, even after doing kind of all these crazy, amazing things, still just wasn't enough because what Shivan had going on here was just too powerful. So again, shout out to the 4-0. Colorless, real good right now.
Oh, very good.
All right. Second place deck, we just talked about it. This is Kyle's list again. We can see that the Infernape, it looks like, got the cut. So the Infernape wasn't quite good enough, but the camera still stayed in the list. It looks like Crispin maybe is just enough to power it up to do that 240. We see the additions of the new cast form, which is a free retreat. It can do chip damage for 2 energy, and it can burn for 1. So that cast form is pretty unique. We talked about it a lot on our set review, kind of being like, is it good? Well, obviously Kyle thought it was good enough, and it got second place list. Besides that, Gouging Fire still in this deck list, and of course Skeledirge. Kyle is a big fan of the Skeledirge. So again, you see a couple of the changes here from week to week as he tests his list. I'm interested to see if he does decide to play it, what it's going to look like in this next tournament coming up.
Yeah, I agree. I think I think that heat energy didn't work out well for him, as we do not see it in this list as well. But I am excited to see the Sunny Assist cast form in here as well. With the lack of Charizard, the other cast form just it takes 3 energy to get going. It's kind of a little bit slower. But with this Sunny Assist, you can just get some chip damage in, like you said. And if you just happen to get another energy on there, you can chip that and then be able to move that energy onto the bench as well. But you got both the ancient Entei and regular Entei in there, just kind of being pals. But I'm liking to see where this deck is going as well. I like it, and definitely it's working. So hopefully we can see him at the top of the leaderboard anytime soon.
Yeah, I'm really interested. We need to get this deck list on stream or something. So, maybe if I can pop in on Sunday, maybe I'll try to stream Kyle's list in the first round if he's participating, because I am really curious about how Gouging Fire and how Entei, both these cards that require 3 energy, are getting powered up in this list. I mean, obviously, Welder, Blacksmith, Raihan, Mela, Crispin, these are all cards that are definitely going to help you. On top of that, you got Magma Basin too. So it'll be interesting to see kind of what Kyle's playstyle is with this deck and, how he's performing so well, because we see this so often. Someone comes up with a deck idea and, they can put up results with the deck, and then in the hands of someone else who necessarily hasn't done the testing or hasn't kind of put in that same amount of work to get to know these cards, doesn't perform quite as well. So I think Kyle is definitely a master of his fire craft, and I want to see it in action. I am so excited, especially because I see a Reizu here too in the list, which we didn't even talk about last time we mentioned it. He knows he's got a lot of evolutions. He knows how important they are to fire. So I think that is a really good card to play when you realize how important those evolutions are to your deck.
Oh, yes, very much so.
All right, the third place list, which again we just mentioned found its way in the finals, is Castella's water list here. And I think that this is similar to maybe some other water lists that we've seen in the past. When I'm looking at it, for some reason, just like Brunno Neves Waylord list is the deck that I immediately popped to. I don't know if there was taken from him, but for now we'll call it Costella's list. I really like this list a lot for a couple different things, and I know you're a water guy, so I'll talk really briefly. I love the new jumbo-sized Waylord, which again, I say new, it's the newer of the Waylords, paired with Kyogre. I just think that they're really good. Like, I don't think that you have to be all in on a special energy build to play the Wailord that requires special energy, just because water's got some pretty good special energies and wash and splash, and then recycle energy is just pretty good by itself too. So I really like that Wailord and Kyogre in a Rain Dance build, and that's what you kind of see here as well. And obviously, you know, Baxcalibur and Inteleon can be attackers too, so you're going to see those Pokemon take prizes too. But besides that, Josh, since you're the water guy, you're the Wailord guy, what are your thoughts on this list when you look at it up and down?
Whenever I see this, there's no room for Satitan, so of course he's going to be playing this specific Rain Dance deck, and Kyogre is just one single card, so it's going to be able to be used a little bit more, just with that sniping as best as you can, like things just kind of slow things down while you're building up that Wailord on the bench. But you can see that Andre really probably. I don't know if he likes Alolan Vulpix or not, but he is playing the Hisuian Basculin over the Vulpix to be able to guarantee those basics onto the bench on the turn that it's used. The difference between Alolan Vulpix and the Basculin is that Basculin, it goes basic straight to the bench. Alolan Vulpix is search for 2 water Pokemon. It doesn't go straight to your bench. You're going to have to wait till the next turn to use it. So you're a little bit more, um, easy targetable to be able to get your hand disrupted, as opposed to Basculin being able to just get it out onto the board as well, which I like. And then you see some other things that you kind of see Timer Ball here and there as a card that's has a lot of discourse around it, whether you're going to play it or not because of its inconsistencies. But whenever you are flipping heads, this card is an incredible card. Actually, I'm not going to lie, or just like, I'm going to say that it can be a good card, but only if you're flipping your double heads or even just a heads, because it is a free way to look for an evolution Pokemon. But I love the 6 energy into the 6 basic into the 4 special. That's one of my favorite ways of kind of aligning your energy, especially with the Wailord build, because you want to make sure that you have all those special energies available. And then you can see that we're opting for the super energy retrieval. Discard 2, get up to 4 energy out of your discard and put it into your hand. Is a little bit of redundancy along with your Nessa. So I don't think there is a super raw, but you kind of see that you want to make sure that you have that energy back in your hand. That way you can utilize, your Kyogre or your Wailord a little bit more often. Let's say your Wailord gets knocked out. Andre is then able to use, that Kyogre, get that out, and be able to hopefully Rain Dance some way to get that Kyogre fed again. But yeah, it's a fun list. I think this is the type of list that you were kind of pushing me in the direction of whenever you were saying, is Baxcalibur going to go into? I like to see Kyogre, and I think Andre was probably listening in on your conversation.
Every now and then I have good ideas, or at least ideas that make a reasonable amount of sense. So, if people are listening to me and thinking about them, appreciate you guys. And if I'm wrong, I'm sorry. On that note, time for a beige hot take. For all these decks that are playing Arazu, I'm just so surprised because I'm not the biggest fan of Arazu. I think it's not a super flexible card. I get why decks play it. You're obviously being like, evolutions are really important to my deck and I need to get them into my hand. And obviously water is really strong at getting set up. You mentioned the Bastion with the free attack. So you're typically going to have, again, bench Pokemon to then search up evolutions. But we talked about this in our lead up. I am just such a big fan of Ball Guy and Apricorn Maker when you're talking about decks that really want evolutions, just because of the flexible nature that searching up balls can get you. It can get you evolutions. If level ball, a dive ball, you're running timer ball, Hisuian heavy ball, like these water decks can run multiple balls, like up to 6 or 7 different balls. If you're running kind of the Wailords to Titan, Vitality Springs Blastoise, you might even consider heavy ball. So having a card like Apricorn Maker, which is worst ball guy, let's be honest, it's just worst ball guy. But the fact that it can set you up with basics in the early turns and then grab you evolutions in the later turns is one of the reasons why I've really been enjoying that pairing. And I know some people are hearing me being like, that's crazy. But also hear me out. Team Aqua's Great Ball exists, which is a ball that can get you a water energy. So if you run that plus Apricorn Maker plus Ball Guy, now you've got another out to grab an energy. And I can't tell you how many times I've watched water players miss one energy. Trust me on this. It sounds crazy, but I think it might be right to start considering Apricorn Maker, Ball Guy, and what are the card? Team Aqua's Great Ball that I just mentioned. Base hot take now is over.
That was one hot take, and you know what I think we need to do? I think we need to cool it down with some water.
No. Well, you said water, but we're going to talk dragon next. Well, hey,
not a good segue.
It's got water energy in it, Josh. So I get where your head was at. It's also got fire energy, so I guess we could have another hot take. All right. This is, I think, just Plopel's list again. We're seeing Nicholas Lindbroker here going 4th place with Dragon, and this is just kind of that same setup where you don't have Fast Call Dragonite, but you've got the Bolt, you got Drago, you've got Drugigon, and you got Drampa, all as basic attackers, plus the new consistency pieces on top of the Garchomp line. So this is just the same deck that we just talked about. I don't know if we mentioned Lost City. All of you guys know how Josh and I feel about Lost City. We're not the biggest on that card in the singleton format, but obviously it's really good in Dragon when you're got some early aggression, double Dragon onto Raging Bolt to snipe a Sobble with Lost City in play is probably a game-winning line, regardless of what's going on elsewhere.
That's like the worst immediate 2 dead cards in your deck whenever that happens. But I think that would be the only change between Alex's list and this list. I think Alex played a Parallel City as opposed to the Lost City.
I respect Parallel. I do not respect Lost City. Someone called me out for it the other day.
The same way.
Yeah, someone called me out on it the other day. And we should probably have maybe a whole episode dedicated to kind of our most toxic cards for the format, Josh. But someone called me out on it the other day where they're like, Lost City, like you're fine with cards like Hex, but you don't like cards like Lost City. Well, I'm like, well, it's a singleton format, and like you're Lost Citying someone's like, I don't know, game plan away, and then like all your recovery cards might be useless at that point if that's a card that you're trying to get back, and then you've got evolutions in your deck. It just kind of like wrecks singleton decks, and the decks that it's trying to hurt, like the one-trick pony decks, if they just play around it appropriately, right? Like don't attack with Sableye until you're ready, put yourself in a position to maybe where you don't need to Sableye again, and then Hitmon Bros, which is another one-trick pony deck, you get rid of one of the Hitmons, well now Okie Doki's just punching you in the face. It's just like, does the card punish the decks that it's supposed to, or are the rest of us collateral damage? It's kind of like Marshadow, right? Marshadow punished greedy decks, right? We say greedy decks, but we all got punished because sometimes you just draw 4 cards and you can't play the game. So is the collateral damage of, ruining someone's whole game plan, worth it to maybe deal with a couple one-trick pony decks? And I think the answer might not be no, but I'm not in charge. I'm just one man with loose GLC morals. So
loose. I would totally want to get hexed at the end of the game, feeling like I've got the game won, but I'd rather get hexed than lose on turn 1 because one of my main source that I'm going to be using this deck for is Lost City away, So I'd rather get hexed on the last turn than lose on the first turn.
I feel you there. I feel you there too. Just, I don't know. So obviously feel free to disagree with us. Obviously we have our own thoughts on how to play the format just like everyone else does, but I will not judge anyone for playing Lost City. It is a very good competitive card. Keep playing it. If you're looking to win games, that's fine. If you're looking to make friends, might consider something else, but those two things sometimes are mutually exclusive.
Yeah.
Well, hey, we're going to talk right now. We talked about some tournament lists that are coming up, and we've been talking for about an hour now, but we would love to highlight some more local lists and local winning lists. And so for this next segment, we're going to be talking about some lists that were submitted to us or that we had to go and find ourselves, or one that I stuck up there because I wanted to talk about it. But if you have any ideas, or if you have some deck lists from your locals that you think are super sweet and you would love for us to talk about them on our tournament roundups, which I think will be a more regular thing as we move forward, feel free to message Josh or I on X, formerly Twitter. I'm at JeffBase3, and of course you got at GymLeader_Josh. Of course, you can always join the All About That Base Discord. We've got a channel called the Unfazed Facts Podcast where you can just drop your list in there, and of course ping us if you want to. I'm pretty active on that Discord, so I will probably see it, and of course I will include the join link to the Discord down below. So join us, share your list with us. Josh and I would love to highlight what you and your locals are doing.
Yep. And I'm active. I'm just an active lurker. So you can always guarantee that whatever you've written on there or wrote, I have seen it.
Oh, that's sad to hear because I write a lot of mean things about you, Josh, and I did not want you to be lurking and reading.
I wanted to bring that up lastly, but here we go.
All right. Our first list, not submitted by the actual pilot of this deck, but submitted to us by Z-Man Cuddles, who is, again, just one of the biggest advocates for his locals. Everything about Zach and Z-Man Cuddles and Ray and that whole channel is just super great and positive vibes for everyone. So go check out Z-Man Cuddles if you haven't got a chance. He's sharing out Connor's list to us, and Connor's list won a recent locals, and it's super sweet, and it's got some super sweet cards in it. The new Uxie from Surging Sparks that we've already talked about. It's got Monkey Dory, a card that we've just seen pop up all over the place recently, but it's got an oldie. Josh, it's got an oldie that's kind of disappeared a bit, but I don't think the card is bad. I think the card might actively still be very good. People are just maybe trying out some of the newer toys like Tinkaton or Togekiss, but Dragapult, and specifically Infiltrator Dragapult, which is just basically it just 120 for 2 energy, plus you get to ping something on the bench with 2 damage counters, is a pretty good attack on a free retreat 150 HP stage 2, but it's got the Infiltrator ability. Basically, if you flip heads, no damage is done to it, and of course, you see here that Connor is playing Luxurious Cape, so just slap a Lux Cape onto your Dragapult, flip a couple heads, and just win the game, right? Like, that's what I love about this deck, and I think that's one of the main game plans, especially one of its main catch-up mechanics here.
Yeah, I like it a lot. Like I used to play Dragapult a lot back in the day and enjoyed it, and it was always a card that you'd kind of fear when playing against Psychic, and then it kind of fell off because of some of the new toys like Tinkaton, like you mentioned before. But I'm glad to see it back and doing some damage at wherever. I guess this is at Z-Man's locals, doing well.
Yeah, and one of the main weaknesses of Dragapult in the past was 150 HP on a stage 2 is not a large amount of HP. And so if you were able to hex and attack in the same turn, Dragapult effectively became quite useless. Well, with the printing of Luxurious Cape, now you have kind of like that added buffer. Like, not if they hex you, they have to hex and field blower you in the same turn, which is a lot more difficult because obviously a lot of the times they're going to be getting a field blower off of a supporter, so they can't play hexed in that same turn. So that helps a lot with Dragapult, and then sometimes you just get lucky. I played a Dragapult Luxurious Cape list against Weeder one time, and I think I flipped 6 straight heads. I got to a point where I was like, Weeder, I need you to roll because I think I'm doing it wrong. And so we got to that point in the game. I just felt so bad because, if you think Timer Ball is a bad card, just imagine playing against this card and getting, basically your entire turn negated time after time after time. And so that's what Dragapult can do. You alluded to it being one of those cards that we used to fear. I think it's time for us to keep fearing it because it's so good. Play Hex, guys. Play Hex in your decks.
Yeah, play Hex. Hex is always a great card as well. I mean, we talked about it being, like somebody mentioned in that Hex, you're good with Hex, but not Lost City. But Hex is just, I think it's a decently well-balanced card for this specific format, because there's so many incredible abilities that those abilities, if shut off for just a turn, can really help, swing the game just a little bit in your favor. So it kind of can give you a winning chance. I know in expanded that it got banned because it is too powerful for that format, but in this format, I think specifically it is, pretty well balanced.
Yeah, in a singleton format where you can just have one of them. Obviously, you can like loop it with like VS Seeker, and these decks are playing VS Seeker and Palpad. Plus, you have Buddy Catch Gallade, so Palpad effectively becomes another VS Seeker. But even then, it might not be too oppressive. But I feel like most decks should always have a game plan in place for ability lock. Right? The decks that are most affected by ability lock are grass and water. And when you look at those two decks, it's really hard for them to have a backup game plan because there aren't any cheap water attackers effectively. So you basically need your Rain Dance set up to get it going. And then grass is the same way. Like if they can't get their board set up, they're basically doomed. So those are the two decks that really struggle. But I think the rest of the format can find ways. And if you're really bummed on Hex, just play Hitmonbros. Don't have any abilities, and then you don't have to worry about Hex.
Oh yeah, don't have to worry about it at all. Just play your greens.
All right. Another list. Hey, segue into Hitmonbros here. We got a tweet from Jaden here talking about their third badge, already having Lightning and Dragon, and then mentioning fighting here and what they're doing. It looks like they were running effectively Castella's list, but they did change Luminous Energy for Rainbow Energy because they stated that 220 is a big difference from Okidogi's HP. I'm not sure if I'm in agreement on that one. Josh, and you'll have to tell me how you feel about it too. I'm just not big on Luminous Energy because I just find myself too often having two special energies to attach. And at that point, Luminous basically becomes useless. I think I'd rather have Rainbow be good all game and then maybe get got by something that does 220, which is more probably Zamazenta. I think that's the exact damage that Zamazenta does. But I don't know. What are your thoughts on Luminous over Rainbow?
I think the sole reason why Luminous, I guess Luminous over Rainbow, there is Prism that's available, but it can only be used on basics. And we got Lucario and Machamp in this specific deck. So the reason why they're not playing Prism is because of those guys. So, Luminous, if you can, kind of have control of what special energy you have, which you really can't in fighting. I can see it. It's supposed to be there for the Lucario and Machamp, but like you said, Rainbow is just going to be a little bit more consistent on if you have a Luminous and nothing else in your hand for the dog. So I don't think it's terrible. I don't think it's terrible, but it's definitely could have a little bit of a downside, especially if you have, because Luminous Energy, if you have two special energies on there, Luminous Energy turns into nothing besides just a regular colorless. So there's a downside and an upside. The upside, you can use it on your stage 1, stage 2. The downside is it turns itself off. So it's kind of like up in the air.
Yeah. And I guess, obviously Jaden here might be concerned about Zamazenta. Again, I think the Pokemon that does 220, the first one that comes to mind is Zamazenta. And then you have things like Wailord and Torterra that could potentially do more than that as well to KO your Okidogi. I think that's the one that's on the brain here. So if that's a card that's into your local meta, obviously opting for Luminous over Rainbow. And that's probably what Jaden did here. There's not a lot of metal where I am. I think I'm the only one so far who's played metal at my locals, so I would definitely opt for Rainbow just for that reason. But again, this list is great. This is basically just Castella's list, and if you want to look at what the best Hitmonbros list is going forward, it is just copy Castella's list, get in the reps and play it. You might have a couple of techs here and there. Obviously, there's no Ninja Boy in this list, which makes me super sad every time I don't see Ninja Boy getting played in these Hitmonbros lists. I think that Ninja Boy is so good, and everyone tells me I'm so wrong. But I'm more about playing my favorites than I am about playing optimally sometimes. So I might be blinded by how Ninja the Boy might be. But what we do see here in this list is that Kofu that we talked about, and you guys know me. I love me some Kofu. Josh, you have any thoughts on this list from Jaden besides the Luminous and Rainbow talk that we just had?
Did Andre start playing Kofu in his list?
Yep, Andre's on Kofu now. He was playing,
Cool.
I think some other things. I don't know, but Kofu definitely found its way to his list.
Cool. I can't wait till Ninja Boy makes it in there because I've seen that Ninja Boy do some work from you, and it can be very surprising.
Yeah, just turn one attached to something that isn't going to do anything. Ninja Boy it into an Okie Dokie, attach the energy, and then it's just Okie Dokie beats from that point on. Like, Ninja Boy is just one of those cards, and I hate to hijack Jaden's list here, but I got to talk about Ninja Boy. I just love it so much. But Ninja Boy is one of those cards that's really cool. People are like, it's just, you're just swapping a card from your board to your deck, but it conserves the energy. And on a deck like Hitmon Bros, sometimes where your struggle is not only getting the Pokemon, but getting the energy, being able to just like swap your Hitmonchan into the Hitmonlee into the second turn with just one single card can sometimes be the difference between like winning or losing or getting that early combo off to disrupt. So I like Ninja Boy a lot, but I do recognize that it is a pretty narrow card. But I do think if it was going to find a home, it is either Hitmon Bros or it might be like Sableye Lost Zone. So those are the two decks that I see Ninja Boy being in. But it's Hitmon Bros is good enough without it. And here's Jaden's list. So if you are a fan of it and you want to win, play this list. Again, Jaden, but a lot of inspiration here from Costella.
Oh yeah, I love me some Hitmon Bros. I'm a big fan of the Palisand, the pile of sand. I like that as like just a kind of a 140 HP mon that can do a lot of spread.
One of our listeners here, Atmos TV, mentioning that the Titan, Josh, that you're so in love with, also does hit 220 and is very popular. So that is another popular Pokemon. So besides Zamazenta, Special Horn, Titan, another 220 hitter. So something to think about. Again, Luminous might be better than Rainbow. Definitely will need its testing. I'm probably still going to be on Rainbow and just get my bad beats if it comes to it. But I get the Luminous. And I get it 100%.
Yep. Congratulations for winning that tournament, though.
Yeah. Kudos to Jaden. All right, this is the list I had to submit. I just had to talk about it, man. This idea has just been on my brain for the longest time, and I finally got my dark badge. And I got my dark badge with a list that I loved. Like, that's the best, right? Like, when you're playing your list that just has some of your favorite Pokemon in it, and you get the win, and you find out that it's competitive all at the same time. It's just so great. And so with the printing of Eviltal, I can't remember where this Eviltal came out, and it wasn't this last set or the set before. I think it was the one before that. Yeah. But Eviltal, Corrosive Winds, put 2 damage counters on anything that already had damage counters. Dark Spread started to seem pretty appealing to me, and so I was just like, let's do it. So you got Absol to spread 10 to everything for 1. You got this Eviltal to come in and add some damage counters. You've got my patented double wheezing. How many times have you guys ascensioned your coughing to realize that your wheezing was prized? Well, just play 2 of them and you don't have to worry about it. You'll always have the other one to back you up. So you've got the normal Galarian wheezing that people play that has the ability lock, plus the poison attack, severe poison, which does 4 damage counters instead of 1 during checkup. Which is kind of a way to spread if you think about it, because you are going to put damage counters on your opponent's Pokemon, and they're most likely going to switch it to the bench. So it does fit into the game style of what the deck is trying to do. But the other wheezing is pretty sweet. Double energy, it does 50 to the active and then 10 to all the bench Pokemon for that double colorless attack cost. Now, it's got a pretty funny ability. If your opponent knocks it out, you can flip a coin, and if heads, their Pokemon gets knocked out too. And I can't tell you how many heads I flipped in this tournament. I think I took care of like a Snorlax with it at some point. I think I just like ascensioned into it and didn't have the necessary energy to attack, and it just sat there and took a KO. And I was like, that's why you play the double wheezing, chat. So that was card super sweet too. And then, of course, Weavile, Rule of Evil. We talked about the Kofragigas earlier that does damage counters. It does 6 to everything that has an ability. Well, Weavile does damage. It does do 60 damage to everything with an ability. So it's slightly worse, but it's still kind of effectively the same role. Now, the interesting thing about Weavile is that it can never, ever deal with a bench barrier. Because the second that you turn off the bench barrier's ability, it doesn't have an ability anymore, so you can't hit it with the attack. So basically, if you play Silent Lab, you know that you're missing out on that bench barrier, which is really super sad, because if it had that, this deck would be so much better.
Yeah.
surrounded out. I needed to win games, and I'm never going to be spreading enough damage to win games. So the original version of my list had Guzzlord in it, but just like it felt like everything that I was trying to do was just all my spreaders were muscle bands. Like I was just doing extra damage so that my Guzzlord could come in and sweep at some point. And that was like good and competitive, but it just wasn't what I wanted to do. So you know what I did? 3 prize Crobat. And Crobat is like one of my favorite Pokemon. So Critical Bite is 3 colorless energy. You get to do 30 damage to one of your opponent's Pokemon. And if you take a KO, you get effectively 3 prizes. The original prize plus 2 extra. I got to Crobat in every single one of my games. It was like the best thing. Normally people like will target it down, but I was like, rare candy into Crobat, reversal energy, win the game. And it was so great. So I just love this list so much. I won on a Wednesday night, and then Thursday night, which was that Halloween, Full Grip Games had their locals, and Dark Spread, like a very similar list, but instead of the Crobat was playing Guzzlord instead, also won the Full Grip Games local. So I think that Dark Spread is a real thing. Now, walk me off of my cloud, Josh. Is it a real thing, or did we just both get lucky?
I think it's absolute garbage. Throw it in the trash. Rip them up, throw them in the trash, forget about it. No, I enjoy this list a lot actually, and you waited to the end to speak on the Crobat. That's one of the first things I noticed. I was like, man, it's gonna like it's because it's so easy to spread damage to little Pokemon that are 60 damage, and then you speaking on just whittling it down. You can just, like you said, rare candy your Crobat, reversal energy, take 3 prizes. It's actually an incredible game plan. I love the use of Vengeful Punch. Defiance Band can help you hit those numbers on your Assault Gate or anything like that, especially once you kind of has because this deck, obviously you want to play from behind just a tad bit. You're always trying to play from behind, but you have all these different ways to get damage on the board. Hopefully your opponent doesn't do any healing whatsoever, because I think any healing might actually be extremely devastating for this deck. But I like it a lot. I like it a lot, and I can see why it'd be so fun.
Yeah,
Now,
this
would you
deck.
say it's more fun than grass?
Oh yeah, 100%. This deck is way more fun than any grass list I've ever played. One of the reasons why I think it's pretty good is like you mentioned it right now. Your opponent has heal effects. Well, you're playing 3 stadiums. You got Artisan, Frozen City, and Silent Lab. Plus, you got some useful tools here. So like you have ways to bump stadiums if needs be. Like a Rough Seas for 1 turn won't kill you. Plus, like those decks that typically need to heal rely on abilities. And Josh, you'll remember when you played your metal deck against my dark deck, I just stuck Galarian Weezing in the active. So this deck just has like kind of an answer for those sorts of decks in the form of an early Galarian Weezing. So this deck can do a lot of different things. Plus, you need your Wall Breaker. I didn't even mention Foul Plays or Rourke, which is the copycat. You need that card. I know other lists are kind of playing the Phantom Transformation one, which can get a stage 1 back because you can get the Golbat back and potentially try for another Crobat if you need to. But I just felt like the Foul Play one was too important. And then kind of the coolest thing about this deck is that even if your opponents are targeting down like your Zubat and your Golbat, they're really good consistency pieces. I opted to play the Zubat that had the lead attack, which gets a supporter from your deck. And then there's the Golbat that on evolution draws 2. So like you're still getting some benefit out of these cards, even if they snipe it before you can get that Crobat active. So it's just kind of cool and interesting. I like this list a lot. I've been working with this Crobat for so long, and to finally go 3-0 with it and feel good about the wins just was great. So I'm so excited. If you're a Crobat enjoyer like me, try this list out. Don't be discouraged if you don't get your wins right away. It definitely takes a lot of time, a lot of practice to get this list right. And of course, if you're feeling like Crobat isn't good enough, go the Guzzlord route, because the Guzzlord route was really good. I think I played Weeder on stream and I went 2-1 with the Guzzlord version. The Guzzlord version's really strong.
Yeah. I like this list a lot. Good job, buddy.
All right, I think this is our last list to talk about, Josh. And this one was submitted by Pan Unbroken, and he has been a birds enthusiast for a long time. And I just feel like we got to talk about his list because you can tell he loves this list a lot. He's got his little bird plush over here on a bird's playmat, which I know we can't quite see. And he's got all the Pokemon blinged out. And we actually had a discussion. I was going to play this list on stream, and Fan Rotom had just come out. And I was like, I want to play Fan Rotom, right? It's a flying type. He's like, it wasn't bird enough. He told me it wasn't bird enough. And then he did opt to play Fan Rotom in it later. So from Pan, officially Fan Rotom is bird enough to play in your bird list. So heads up to that. But this list is super sweet. It's got all the special energies that you'd ever want from a colorless list. It's got the Primal Turbo Archeops that we just mentioned previously in the 4-0 winning list from one of the Sunday tournaments. And it's got some other really cool Pokemon to talk about. Hisuian Braviary, which for 3 energy, I think does like 130. And then you've got Lugia that has the energy loop attack, which does, I think, 120 for 3, and then an energy bounces back to your hand. You've got Sky Circus Swanna, which does 70 plus 70 more if you discard an energy. If you happen to have played Birdkeeper that turn, the attack cost is free, which is super sweet sometimes. As you're trying to set up other attackers, you get kind of just a free KO, and then you can charge up the next thing. You got a lot of different good bird consistency pieces. Fan Rotom is the one we just talked about, but you've also got Pidgeotto, which we've already talked about a little bit too when we mentioned your cloak. Then you've got Dodrio that lets you draw a card and put a damage counter on it, and then it does more damage for each damage counter on it. Pelipper, which lets you grab a supporter from your deck or your discard pile. And then a really cool tech piece is this Aerodactyl here that does Devolution Ray. So for a double colorless, it does 100 damage, but it also devolves the Pokemon that it's hitting. So like if you think about it, like you're KOing almost any stage 2 in the format. Like a Rillaboom goes from 170 HP to 90 with the Grookey. Same thing with a Torterra, 190 to 100. So this Aerodactyl is actually a really cool effect. And you get to play this Aerodactyl with a different fossil, which is the reason why it's found its way into the list, because now you can no longer play 2 Pokemon that evolved from unidentified fossil since the lab ban. So really cool list. Again, Birdkeeper is on point with a list like this. Just so good to see birds getting some wins. I know that it's been really close to winning at Full Grip Games. I'm not sure if it's won one yet at Full Grip Games, and if it has, correct me on that. But it's just really cool to see birds, because birds is definitely a subgroup that needs some love.
Oh yeah, I like a themed deck sometimes, and the bird one is a pretty fun one. And I love the use of Chaotic Swell as, just a tech card against other stadiums such as Lost City or anything like that you don't want your opponent to be able to play out. You can just play your Chaotic Swell. The Parallel City is there just to make sure that your opponent doesn't set up as much or as quickly as possible. But I mean, Fan Rotom, it's flying. That thing is as a bird can get. It is soaring through the air. He's probably faster than all these birds combined.
Hey, birds are robots, right? Haven't we just assumed that birds are robots? So, a
Yes.
robot that's a bird just fits in already. Like, come on. Fan Rotom is a bird. You've heard it here. We are officially stating it. Pan, who is the bird expert, has told us that Fan Rotom is a bird. There is no disputing it. We'll move on.
There's none. But yeah, I do like the use of Aerodactyl and its devolution, because you can pretty much, like you said, like you touched on earlier, just get rid of pretty much anything. There's a deck in Standard, Galurk or something like that, and it had like some devolution attack, and those things are always so fun to play because sometimes your opponent isn't, even thinking about being devolved by a specific Pokemon without devolution, TM devolution. So that's always one of those sneak attacks, and then it leaves them with an extra card in their hand that they can't use, so that can also kind of just bulk up your hand. And then, they can't really do anything unless they discard it. It just goes right back into their deck if there's any hand disruption, and it kind of just puts that extra dead card back into the deck sometimes. So yeah, I like the bird deck.
Yeah, I like it a lot too. So excited to see it. Congratulations to Pan for his win. Again, a list I'm excited to keep trying, because again, I tried almost this exact version minus Fan Rotom, and I had a lot of fun playing it. When your energies are basically supporters, because again, you got powerful energy, jet energy, gift energy. You can do a lot with Pokemon that might be a little underpowered, like no Snorlax in this list, obviously, but like still just some really strong attackers and all the good stuff that Colorless has to offer.
Yes.
Josh, that brings us to the end of kind of our like tournament roundup. And, if there's one thing I got to say to kind of wrap it up is that, man, special energy is everywhere. And we either need to be playing it or be prepared for it.
Yep, I do agree with that because it's just running rampant. And when something's running rampant, you want to make sure to keep it in check. So make sure to play your enhanced hammers. Make sure to play your fabas. We got a tech episode not that long ago that you can go check out to see how you can tech against special energy. I'm not going to give you all the clues right now, but right now, as soon as this is done, go to that episode and find that special energy section. It's chock full of information.
Oh, yeah. That was a good one, too. It was one of my favorites to record and to think about because it definitely made my brain kind of think about, like, how should I be teching? It's one of those episodes that you do and you're like, I'm not only, like, I'm learning while I'm trying to prepare this. So it was a cool one to do. Something else I'll say after kind of checking out all these lists is that the last two sets, Stellar Crown and Surging Sparks, have had a pretty big impact, I think, on Gym Leader Challenge. We saw Raging Bolt from Stellar Crown, Fan Rotom from Stellar Crown doing great things in a lot of different lists. You see Gouging Fire and the Skeledirge kind of helping out Fire a bit in those lists by Kyle GG. So it just feels like those sets have been really impactful, but it also feels like GLC is in like a nice place, a good place for brewers, people looking to come in and kind of create their own thing. Josh, are you kind of feeling that same vibe coming off of GLC recently?
Yeah, the last few sets, I mean, Fire and Dragon has gotten, even though it doesn't seem like Dragon has gotten a lot, I think that Fire and Dragon has seen a lot of a bump in the last few sets. And then, Colorless just getting that, S tier to S plus tier bump with Fan Rotom. So some of the new sets that have come out may not look like much, but there's a lot cooking underneath the table at this moment, and I'm excited to see. I get excited 6 months out when a new set is announced. I'm like, okay, what's going to happen? What can we start looking at? Is it going to be part of my like? I'm always looking straight for my favorite type first, and then I'll kind of fan out to see if another type is probably going to get something really good that's going to keep bump them up a tier or two.
Yeah, I mean, you didn't even mention Metal, which I know is one of your favorites to play. Metal's
Yeah.
gotten a lot of really cool cards recently. Whether or not they've worked out, like the Metal was a card that I really looked at and was like, that card's going to be really cool from Stellar Crown, and it just hasn't quite found its way. The combos maybe a little too cute, but our Chaladon seems to be kind of the new hotness for what a lot of these Metal decks are doing. And then the Caparaja, it seems to be kind of like a split. Like, are you playing a more tanky stadium-based build, or are you going more like basics? And we even see Roger, who Blubber, play kind of like a five basic metal list to some success recently too. So there's all these cool and different things that are happening in Gym Leader Challenge. And if you're one of those people who have not been getting into the format because you think it's kind of stale and everyone's playing the same 12 supporters, which is what I hear from people from time to time, it's just that there's so much that you can do in this format and it just feels new and unique. Just all the time, and it doesn't rotate, but we get new toys all the time, and I just love Gym Leader Challenge for all that it is because of those things.
Yep, it's like the ocean. There's still, you go dive deep enough, you're gonna find something that somebody hasn't saw before. And with that being said, it is, getting to the end of November. Make sure we're getting close to Thanksgiving. So make sure you stay safe on the roads, make sure to stay thankful, hug somebody, love somebody. And that's all I have.
Yeah, Josh. Well, I'll tell you one thing I'm thankful for is an awesome co-host. Thank you, Josh, for hanging out with us tonight. It is always a pleasure to talk GLC with you. And of course, everyone else, thank you so much for listening. I've got a lot of gratitude for all our listeners out there. You guys have been great to us too. So thank you all for listening to us talk about Gym Leader Challenge tonight on Unfazed Facts. Again, the podcast dedicated to all things Gym Leader Challenge and the Pokemon TCG. Have a good night.
See ya.